Hi, everyone, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to to everyone tuning in from around the world. Welcome to Global Compact Network Singapore's breakout session on accelerating climate action during an economic recovery, trends, innovations, and cost-saving opportunities. My name is Kimberly, and I'll be your MC for today. So we are very pleased to have everybody join us. Just some housekeeping matters. Do note that this session will be recorded, and all recordings, like all other plenaries, will be made available after the Leaders Summit. So we do have quite a comprehensive lineup of speakers today. So if you have any questions for our speakers, please pop them in the chat function on your right. And if you need any technical assistance, please reach out via the chat function as well. So let me just start my screen. So what can we expect from today? As we adjust to a new normal brought on by COVID-19, sustainable solutions will play an increasingly important role in unlocking new business opportunities while helping the private sector advance climate action and the SDGs. I'll kick off today's event by setting the scene briefly. We'll then have the opportunity to hear from 4 sustainable solutions providers in the region. We'll hear about their innovations and how they are reimagining business as usual. So, Singapore, like many other countries in the world, has not been spared from the effects of climate change. As a low-lying island, we remain fundamentally vulnerable. So the National Climate Change Secretariat, which is part of the Prime Minister's Office of Singapore, has developed a long-term low-emission strategy to transition Singapore to a low-carbon future. This graphic summarizes what it looks like in a nutshell. So you can see here on the left, Singapore has enhanced its nationally determined contribution, or NDC, to no higher than 65 million tons of CO2 equivalent around 2030. And beyond that, as you can see here, Singapore aspires to halve its emissions from its peak to 33 MT CO2e by 2050, with a view of achieving net zero emissions as soon as viable in the second half of the century. So how do we get there? There are 3 thrusts in Singapore's mitigation strategy. First, the transformation of Singapore's industries, economy, and society. This will be aided through a carbon tax with an initial starting rate of $5 per ton. Second, the adoption of low-carbon technologies, such as carbon capture, utilization, and storage, or CCUS, as well as low-carbon fuels, such as green hydrogen. And third, the exploration of international collaboration in areas such as well-functioning carbon markets, carbon storage, and even potentially regional electricity grids. And on adapting to climate change, Singapore is looking to take appropriate measures, ranging from protecting our coastal lines from sea level rise to strengthening our public health and food security systems to reduce potential climate-related risks. So the private sector is also advancing climate action in tandem. In addition to the innovative solutions that we will hear more of later, we also see an increasing business interest in internal carbon pricing. So in a nutshell, when a company practices internal carbon pricing, it involves assigning a cost on its greenhouse gas emissions. So this helps the company assess the financial implications of their carbon emissions. It is also being increasingly seen as a way of managing climate risks, especially for investors to drive cost savings and to spur innovation. So be it governments or the private sector, we see similar actions on climate change regionally and globally. There's increasing momentum and conversations around our global climate emergency and the urgency with which actions need to be taken. But then, COVID-19 came along and threw a wrench in the works. COVID-19 has not only presented a major health crisis, it has also threatened to reverse the progress that we have made on the SDGs and the Paris Agreement. So let's take a look at the impact of COVID-19 on emissions in more detail. So at first glance, the numbers look positive. Despite an increase in residential electricity usage, we see drastic reductions in economic activity. And this has reduced emissions in many sectors, ranging from aviation to construction. Research shows that we are likely to see the largest ever annual fall in CO2 emissions, more so than the 2008 financial crisis, more so than previous wars, and more so than previous pandemics. Current estimates so far place this reduction at about 5.5% of the amount of carbon emissions that we emitted last year. And I think we can all relate to this reduction, in our daily lives all around the world in some way or another. There's a near halt in global air travel. The roads are less crowded, and as we look out, from our windows at home, the skies perhaps seem a little clearer. However, this short-term gain is likely to come at an unprecedented economic cost. The UN has mapped out expected first and second order effects of COVID-19 on the SDGs, which you can see here in the graphic on the left. From this, it's likely that the economic slowdown will negatively impact our collective advancements towards the SDGs and the Paris Agreement. Hence, the short-term emissions reduction is likely to be short-lived, unless countries deliver on their commitment to sustainable development once the global economy picks up. And to put things in context, while there is a heartening 5.5% drops in emissions, global emissions actually need to fall by more than that a year, around 7.6% every year, in fact, to keep global warming to less than 1.5 degrees Celsius. So in this time of uncertainty, ambitious climate action is as urgent as ever. So what does a post-COVID-19 recovery look like? Our colleagues at the World Bank have written a really interesting thought leadership piece on this. In a nutshell, as the immediate health crisis improves, many households may have depleted savings and might consume less. Similarly, firms and financial institutions might need to rebuild their balance sheets and might be less able to invest. So it's reasonable to expect aggregate demand to remain depressed for a short period of time after the pandemic, and this will be the time for a stimulus aimed at achieving financial recovery. And here, government actions will be critical to ensure a quick return to a healthy economic situation. But even if investments have the same benefits over the short term, some options will do better at promoting long-term sustainable growth than others. So thinking ahead, therefore, the urgent focus on the short-term need to recover financially should not overlook opportunities to achieve other longer-term goals that we might have, such as our climate action goals. So we see this as an opportunity for green stimulus to help us recover better and recover stronger from this pandemic. So this list of some green stimulus opportunities that we foresee happening in various forms around the world. So one, we have investing in clean energy, to incentivizing the transition from fossil fuels to clean energy. 3, lowering embodied carbon costs of stimulus projects. And 4, incentivizing energy efficiency. Now, note that this is not an exhaustive list. There are multiple ways to boost the economy while accelerating climate action. And this will require us to reimagine how we live, how we work, and how we consume. So that said, innovation will be a key driver in accelerating climate action. So we are glad to have today 4 speakers from the region who will be sharing how they advance innovations in climate action in their respective industries. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Robin Fo, founder and CEO of Right People Renewable Energy, or RPRE. So RPRE specializes in helping commercial and industrial clients switch from fossil fuels to solar energy, working mainly on off-grid projects in remote locations across Indonesia. So Robin, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kim. Just a quick check, you can see my slides with my company logo and yeah, great. Thank you so much for the introduction, Kim, and giving us an overview of this climate that we're in, this COVID, and even this transition to clean energy. Special thanks to GCNS as well for inviting me and allowing me a platform to share what we do. I think what's nice about this conference is that you hear from a macro perspective what everyone is really trying to do their best. And then I'm going to come from a practitioner point of view where we share about what we do on the ground. I'll have a local example as well as an example in Indonesia as well. So who are we? So RPRE is a second generation family business, and we really believe we're a company of purpose and we can be a force for good. So it's founded in my EMBA program in INSEAD in 2017, and we're also a registered social enterprise and a certified B Corp. In fact, we're the only certified B Corp doing sustainable solutions, renewable energy solutions in Southeast Asia. What we do is, like Kim said, we work with clients, primarily the C&I space, and then they're primarily using diesel generators. So pollutive, noisy, expensive. And actually in this COVID era, what's actually the most problematic is that it requires constant resupply of fuel. So what we do is we come in and we introduce solar as well as batteries. And we don't get rid of the diesel generator completely. It stays there in case of backup when there's like 4 or 5 days of rain and then there's little sunshine. So it's there as a backup. The enemy here is the fuel, the diesel itself, and not the generator itself. Then we work with the clients to actually finance a project, whether it's with banks themselves or whether we will use our balance sheet to help them finance it. But what we see in this climate is that more and more investors are actually interested in investing into sustainable projects. And we work with impact investors to actually help issue a mini green bond or to help put their dollars to do good. So this is our business model and this is what we do. So what have we done in terms of climate action during this COVID era? If I may just, this is the list of all the stuff that we do, but I think pictures paint 1,000 words. Here's a floating fish farm in Singapore. It's actually the largest ocean fish farm by Kubara, Barramundi Asia. And previously, they were actually using diesel generators to power their operations, to use their laptops, their analysis, their laboratory equipment. And they were working fine until these movement restrictions came into play. And then you couldn't go out to do work. Everyone had to work from home. Only essential services were allowed to move around. But even then, this was very difficult, let alone it's out in the ocean. So movement was really hampered. So fortunately for them, they actually had installed solar and batteries late last year, even before the COVID happened. And they were so glad that it happened because now they can actually operate independently. Initially, it was all about saving costs, lowering the cost of energy. But now they're very glad that actually they were energy independent and they no longer were reliant on any external factors to come in to power their operations. So this is usually the conversation that would happen. So we start off trying to help the client save money, and then they realize all the other benefits from it as well. I think the positive benefits came from the environmental side. There was no more noise, so people could work in peace. I think it's a better quality of the fish has less death. There's even dolphins returning to the place, which we can see here. So that was quite a nice surprise. But I think for the company itself, it's more about the energy independence. And you can see the batch at the back, and there are several others as well that they're going to continue to build in the second location. Moving on to another project. This is actually a dive resort project in Indonesia. And it's a Ganga Island Resort and Spa. This is actually the largest solar and battery project for a dive resort in the whole of Indonesia. And previously, they were running on diesel generators as well. So once again, the initial conversation started with wanting to save money, save on energy expense, and they commissioned us to go there to actually do the solar project. Once again, because of COVID, you saw lots of supply, the fuel crash, even though fuel oil was cheap and diesel was cheap, but they couldn't get access to it again. So now, even if they wanted to put diesel into a tank and then ship it onto a boat and then get the crew to carry it onto the site, they couldn't do so. Maybe this picture will tell a better illustration. So last year, we also cleared a bit of land that's central to the resort in the back of house, away from the beachfront villas, and installed solar panels. We had to clear 18 trees and replace 10 times the number of trees, 180 trees, and install the solar and batteries. I think what's really nice as well is that they now no longer even need to use diesel. For the recent times, they've been still doing upgrading and maintenance because obviously tourism and travel has faced a massive decline. But they can operate independently now with just solar and batteries, and they feel ready to take on the next few years once traveling is allowed to be open again. Just a better close-up of the solar installation on the Ganga Island Resort. And just some of the nice wildlife examples. We installed this in November last year, and in just the span of a couple of months, for the first time in their history, over 10 years, they had turtles return to lay eggs. This is the 4th time a turtle laying has been done. And also for the very first time, a dugong appeared in the jetty to actually come back to life. So I think the environmental benefits are clearly there, but I think the practical financial side is actually when the clients realize that they can save energy, they can save money, and they don't have to be reliant on any external fuel source. So really, I'm going to conclude. 10 minutes is not a long time, but our dream is actually to help Indonesia be a Singapore company that helps Indonesia go from this to clean and green like this. Yeah, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robin, for the insightful presentation. So, there's a need to pivot to cleaner sources of energy, and we are glad that companies like RPRE are pushing for bolder climate action in that regard. So now, before we move on, just some minor housekeeping. So when the speaker shares their slides, just know that you can also double-click on their slides to maximize it so you can see it clearer. Yeah. So moving on, while it is important to be mindful of what types of energy that we consume, it is also just as important to be mindful of how much energy we consume. So in an Industry 4.0 landscape, technology will play an increasingly important role in helping us be more efficient in our energy consumption. So with that, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Ashokan Ramakrishnan, Director of Smart Metering at iWow Connections. iWow Connections is a Singapore-based wireless technology company focused on helping businesses and homes consume water and power more sustainably through their smart metering solutions. Ash, the floor is yours.
Okay. COVID-19 has been described as the global crisis of our time. The social and economic impact will take many years to unfold, and I do not know how things will turn out. But I know that those who can adapt to the new normal will not only survive, but thrive. Good morning, everyone from Singapore. My name is Ash, and I head the smart metering business in iWow. iWow stands for Inspiring the World of Wireless. We are an IoT provider, and it's my honor today to speak to you. Okay. What I've been asked to do is share how we've been helping businesses take climate action by uncovering unconscious waste in electricity and water consumption. We've been doing this before COVID-19, and we expect the demand for solutions that help businesses to reduce costs while protecting the planet to be even more relevant in the post-pandemic era. But before I begin, allow me to share something I read recently. It's an interview by Yuval Harari. He's the author of a life-changing and best-selling book, Sapiens, and a few others. He was asked to comment or to share his view of how COVID-19 would change the world. And for those of you who've read Yuval's books, you will know that he's a brilliant mind, gifted not only in connecting the dots and making sense of complex situations, but also in painting a compelling picture of what is yet to come. So when I came across the article in my social media feed, I was very excited to hear his views. Let me read a paragraph so you can sense what he's saying here. He said, during the next few months, the world is going to be fluid and very malleable. We could choose to deal with the current crisis through global solidarity and cooperation, which will result in a more unified and harmonious world. But we could also choose to deal with it through nationalistic isolation and competition, which will probably make the crisis even far more acute and result in more fragmented and hostile world. He goes on to talk about choices between imposing totalitarian surveillance regimes or empowering citizens and ensuring greater governmental transparency. The choice between rescuing powerful corporations or using this opportunity to rein in big businesses. But most importantly, and to me at least, he spoke about the choice between rebuilding our transport and energy sector on greener foundations versus narrowly focusing on economic recovery while throwing environmental caution to the wind. His message, I think, is very clear, and that is the future is not fixed, and it depends on the choices we make today. This message resonates deeply with me, and I'm sure it resonates with you too. And this is the basis for what we do in iWow. In iWow, we aspire to help businesses make wiser choices, but we adopt a rather unique approach. We believe that change happens when good people become aware of problems and they take ownership for them. This is one thing to educate people on problems, but unless they believe that it's their problem to solve, nothing will really change. So what we do in IWOW is that we deploy smart meters across our customers' facility to measure their water and electricity consumption accurately and in a very granular manner. For example, our meters capture and transmit readings once every 10 minutes. And back in our server, our AI algorithms will detect abnormal patterns and send alerts to our customers for their action. And what we found that really validates our model is that because this is our own customers' data, there's a very natural sense of ownership to the problems. And in most cases, we see customers understanding the issues very quickly and then taking actions to resolve the problems that we raise. And more importantly, over time, we see them making better choices in how they consume electricity and water. So we've been doing this for the past 5 years, and hopefully we've been creating value for our customers. And we're very thrilled to receive the Singapore Corporate Sustainability Apex Award in 2018 for the work that we do. Over the next 2 slides, I would like to share with you examples of unconscious waste in water and electricity consumption that we've uncovered. When I describe those examples to you, I'm sure you feel that they seem very obvious. But what is shocking is that they have been going on for a long time and always just under the radar of management. The first example is harvesting rainwater. It rains a lot in Singapore, and when it rains very hard. But as you can see, most of the time, the rainwater is just wasted and washed down the drain. When the ironic thing is that rainwater is perfect for cooling towers, which accounts for the biggest use of water in most air-conditioned buildings. And if you've been to Singapore, you know that we have many air-conditioned buildings. The second example is in taps and shower that uses excessively high flow rates. Okay, here again, this is very common in dormitories, both in the university and schools, as well as the migrant workers' dormitories. And it's very common that everyone would know which cubicle has the best water pressure. But what is not common is that very few realizes how much water it wastes. Okay. The third example, which I think is probably the most common waste of water, comes in our toilets. Here we often see automatic flush valves in the toilet flush systems getting jammed, and as a result, water flows gushes continuously, or you can see trickling into the bowl because of a leaky valve. And at best, a good Samaritan, if he discovers it, will try to stop the leak, but the problem will continue and it will repeat again. So unless the system triggers the right people, which is the maintenance crew, to solve it, this problem keeps going on and on. Okay? And a flush valve that is running for 1 day accounts for over 200 liters of water. Okay? The other example is dishwashers here. So dishwashers are one of the rare equipment that you find. We don't really see that very often in Singapore, but it is very efficient appliance that consumes less than 4 liters of water per rinse cycle. What we found, however, in this case, that dishwashers was used in a restaurant setting here, but you can see it was not used efficiently. You can see that it's used half load. But what was more alarming was that the operator of the dishwasher only used one of the 3 modes possible. So he always set it at medium. I guess it's more out of habit or lack of proper training rather than lack of conscientiousness, because this same employee would literally pre-wash the plates before he puts it into the dishwasher. And as a result, he uses a lot of water in pre-washing. Okay. The next example is in the irrigation system. So Singapore is known as a very green country, and many of our buildings have green walls. But green walls, while it's very nice to look at, beautiful to see, it's almost impossible to maintain. So often over time, the pipes will get degraded, and you can see on the picture, either it releases too much water or it doesn't release enough. And again, these systems are out of sight, they are outside the building, so most times management is unaware of the waste that happens. And the last picture here I have is a picture of high pressure jets being used to clean the walkway. And this is again a very common way of cleaning our walkways, and it uses a lot of water. There are other more efficient methods. The next set of slides here, I have 6 examples of unconscious waste in electricity. In the interest of time, I won't go through all, I'll just cover 3. The first one is we see faulty sliding doors. So we have air-conditioned buildings and sliding doors are very common. And likely these doors have either this sliding doors open and close on its own, right? And you often see that it's either the motion sensor is set too sensitively and it keeps opening and closing when no one is using it, or the mechanism is faulty and it stays open for too long. But each time that it does that, hot air comes into the building and the air conditioning system of the building kicks in to try to cool it down. And again, it uses a lot of electricity for that. The second example is clogged filters. So you can imagine that as a result of clogged filters, the efficiency of the refrigerating system can be diminished by almost half. And it uses a lot more electricity to keep the systems cold. And it's just a 10 minutes job to clean the filters, but often it's overlooked. And the last example at the bottom is unoptimal choice of locating of our refrigeration systems. Here you see an ice box neatly pushed at the corner of the room. But by pushing that ice box to the corner of the room, the heat exchange efficiency is reduced and electricity consumption is increased at least 2 times. And again, this can be easily avoided if we leave a 10 centimeter gap. So I guess my point here is to show that there are lots of unconscious waste that happens in our buildings. And if we can find them, we can reduce our costs. So allow me now to conclude. I really have no clue what will happen in the post-COVID world. And there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of fear of the unknown. But if anything, this last 2 months living in lockdown has demonstrated to me that a new way of living is possible. It's shown to me that we can still experience success, we can experience joy and happiness by engaging, but now in a different way. Hopefully one that's more sustainable and without all these unnecessary excesses. But it really depends on our choices that we make now. Okay? And the choice is not really between profit or the planet, but really I hope my presentation has shown you that we can actually be profitable by focusing on sustainability. It's not a choice of one or the other. We become more profitable by focusing on sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ash, for that insightful presentation. As digital transformation becomes increasingly important, it is likewise our hope here at Global Compact Network Singapore that more companies like you harness the power of technology to uncover unconscious waste and further optimize their energy efficiency. So before we move on, just a very warm welcome to those who have joined us midway. So just a short repeat of the housekeeping rules. So if you have any questions for our panelists, please put them in the chat function and we will try to get them as many as we can. But for now, we'll move on. So next, when we think about reimagining, how we live, how we work, and how we consume, it is also worth looking at the things in our daily life where we don't often realize how big an impact that they might have on our environment. So the carbon footprint of the food we eat is just one of those examples. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to our third speaker, Ms. Sharon Jean Gomortico, President and GM of Mora Nation Agricultural Products. Mora Nation is a global food and agricultural trading company based in the Philippines and is actively involved in humanitarian aid and development projects with the United Nations. Sharon, over to you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I also turn the honor to our Filipino farmers. Our company made a commitment to them that we will always tell their stories. Today, I will tell you 3 short stories, all in a span of 10 minutes. The first story happened a year ago. Together with an agriculture organization, our company was part of the purchase and delivery of rice seeds. The extraction point was in Cotabato, an area identified as a combat or red zone. 3 years prior, we met with FAO in response to the rice crisis due to the Cotabato drought. Our growers recounted having the roads blocked by rice cartels because they refused to sell at a price lower than the production cost. After a long standoff, they sold their grains at a loss to these traders. Years passed, and they found themselves forgotten. And now we were there, the first group buying their seeds on a fair trade. Clan war erupted in Cotabato a few days before we dispatched our team. A few days later, gunfight between armed groups happened. And so we share this now that we may never forget that the Philippine grains we often take for granted have stories to tell. More of pain, less of gains. In an agriculture country such as the Philippines, and now the largest importer of rice, where our trade deficit is huge, our collective experiences in the sector highlights the need for deeper reflection and action. And it is an ongoing saga for growers who contend with climate change, poverty, and the struggle towards peace. Should we find ourselves asking how we can rebuild more inclusive economies to set a new course for a socially just and climate resilient world where no one is left behind, then we need to go to the peripheries in conflict-ridden fields as well, where the forgotten are, because they have more to offer than their sad stories. Our Cotabato rice growers have climate resilient seeds. The germination test conducted by the National Seed Quality Control Services showed purity of 99.7% and a germination rate of 96%. These seeds require little irrigation and are drought resistant. This is the heirloom rice that was held precious to them as it was part of the heritage thought lost. As we press for development and peace, we are supporting the UN's initiatives. Prior to the COVID, our team was still in Mindanao assisting the UN as the Mora transitions towards autonomy. To move forward towards inclusion and sustainability, we are supporting Grow Asia's efforts to implement the ASEAN guidelines for responsible investments in food, agri, and forestry. This initiative ensures that future investments in the agri value chain shall contribute to regional development, food and nutrition security, equitable benefits, and the sustainable use of resources. Government, the private sector, and civil society, such as the UN Global Compact, play key roles. The ASEAN RISE seeks to provide stakeholders with a roadmap towards the practice of responsible investments and to provide a benchmark to measuring impact. Grow Asia, together with the ASEAN Secretariat, International Institute for Sustainable Development, FAO, OECD, and others, encourages adoption for companies like Mora by providing technical assistance, case studies, and linkages to assist us in reaching critical areas such as growers in peripheries. We also follow the OECD and FAO's guidance on responsible agri-supply chains. This is backed by over 40 governments and provides businesses like Mora with a framework on how to carry out supply chain due diligence in line with international standards, such as the Global Compact's 10 principles and OECD guidelines for multinational enterprises. As a participant of OECD Pilot on Responsible Agri-Supply Chain in Southeast Asia, Mora has an opportunity, together with more than 20 agribusinesses in Southeast Asia, to understand how supply chain due diligence can help strengthen our risk management, meet key markets' expectations, and support our contributions towards the SDGs. Linkages with OECD, Grow Asia, Global Compact, and others provide engagement platforms for farm communities, even if they are in red zones. Together, we will find their alignment and place in the value chain during the COVID and thereafter. Our second story involves our company. I meant to share this with our participants who are trying to find their way post-pandemic. As we move forward in a new landscape, being small, as in being a small and medium enterprise, at the start of the crisis, we were worried about the future of our business and our stakeholders. But acknowledging that we cannot do this on our own and help is on the way, and being the help ourselves, we can still be relevant by doing what we do best. All these can make us pivot towards our organization surviving and thriving after the pandemic. For our company to survive, we need to be innovative in our business models. In our case, we had to respond to the UN's call to support them in their COVID response and go with them to the front lines. For the past 6 years, in these critical times, our UN response teams and resources are mobilized in assisting the UN with their requirements. During the COVID, we saw the effects in our supply chain on our sector. We found our farmers throwing away their crops due to the inability of the market to absorb. We partnered with organizations so that together we can purchase their produce and distribute these to families who need them. While I was reading the guidelines of my son's school as it transitions to the online learning platform, the message of the Ateneo de Manila makes it also relatable to SMEs now. It states, the Chinese characters for crisis, a combination of the character for danger and opportunity. Inasmuch as the unprecedented crisis has threatened our systems, it has also presented us with the opportunities to grow, improve, and thrive, end quote. Mora Nation will always be an advocate of lifelong learning and how we should always invest in human capital and defend human rights. As we move forward in rebuilding our lives and businesses using the 10 principles of the UN Global Compact, let us not forget our humanity and our responsibility to our environment and to others. Our third story revolves around the plant that is endemic in Southeast Asia. We believed in the plant so much, we named our company after it. Before we had all these engagements, it has been the moringa at our core. We believe that this plant could leave an impact to the world when the SDGs culminate in 10 years. The moringa shares with it our basic human tenets. Its humility comes to fore silently until the need for it arises. Notice our farm fields using the moringa as an inexpensive living barrier. Its root system also nourishes the soil as it is also a deterrent to rodents. I speak of its resiliency, reflecting our human proclivities as well to survive even in difficult conditions. We have provided our moringa seeds to researchers in state-owned University of the Philippines in Los Baños as they study its climate resiliency to fight desertification in Asia. As a crop, it needs little care, does not require a lot of water. Moreover, since the plant grows so fast, it is also used by growers as a foliar spray to increase plant growth and as manure to improve soil fertility for other crops. It is also calamity resistant. When Taal volcano decimated, the rain is very fast and grows in abundance. Our growers use this as a main source of livelihood, developing products that shall integrate nutrient-rich moringa in food. Post-COVID, we're also testing the moringa seed oil with the soldiers as an antiviral, anti-COVID solution. Samples of our oil to the Philippine Institute of Pure and Applied Chemistry in Ateneo. Results have been promising as well as a source for wellness and health. Research in induction of apoptosis or cell death by moringa on human cancer cells. It prevents oxygen, thereby affecting its destruction. Reasons why it's called the miracle plant. The Moringa initiative is scalable. Currently, we're working 5 local communities. To reinforce expansion of this initiative, we're developing strong linkages with our lion agencies, such as the Department of Social Welfare and Development, Department of Agrarian Reform, and the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. They're involved in its propagation in areas characterized by high incidences of poverty, unemployment, and deforestation. 1 million moringa and distributing 1 million moringa food in each region. We provide advocacy and science-backed research towards making malunggay as a viable force in climate action, inclusivity, and sustainable development. Our goals are to push the malunggay as a tree for climate action, as a valuable commodity for income generation and poverty alleviation, and as a high-value crop with the means of assisting in the country's agenda of promoting wellness, fighting malnutrition, and providing food nutrition. Moving forward after the COVID, this is still a beautiful and blessed world because we have resources like the moringa. We look forward to harnessing its properties for the good of all and our planet. I invite you to join us in our Million Moringa movement and see how this plant can contribute to reaching the SDGs. In closing, change has come. At this point, we need to move forward, take courage, and innovate to face the world post-COVID. Allow linkages and communities to strengthen us and accelerate climate action so that our planet can still care and carry all 7.8 billion of us to the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Like you, we are passionate about a future in which communities are uplifted and natural resources are used responsibly. And we're really glad to see a sustainable solution achieving both objectives. So last but not least, taking climate action is important, but measuring impact and optimizing performance is just as important. So when we head into an economic recovery phase, how can we use data to make more intelligent decisions, not just to optimize profits, but also to optimize our impact on the planet? So with that, I'd like to introduce you to our final speaker, Mr. James Donovan, CEO of ADEC Innovations. ADEC is an impact investing company that designs, develops, and delivers a diverse data management and technology portfolio of ESG solutions. And James, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I appreciate that introduction. I'm Jim Donovan, co-founder of ADEC Innovations, and I'd like to first of all thank all the previous presenters for some fantastic presentations and impactful information. Let me get into it. I'm here to make data interesting, data exciting. So I'd like to start off with we're in a unique time. SDGs cannot be under lockdown also. With the onset of this pandemic, physical lockdowns, and the ensuing economic fallout around the world, it's time for a new contract with society. This is an opportune time for the business community to give importance to the SDGs and Agenda 2030. Business makes up over 70% of all the economic activity around the world. At the end of the day, if we don't engage business in a proactive way, we can't ever get to a solution. Businesses should and must contribute to do its share alongside with governments and other stakeholders to ensure that the SDG indicators will be achieved. We're all in this together. Frankly, we have responded to these challenges incrementally in the past, to some success, and also we really haven't hit or been on track to our goals. We need to dramatically shift this effort and transform our economic models going forward, with considerations and understanding of the relationship between sustainability and the new emerging new normal. Efforts to resolve the key issues between people, process, technology have been made. We need to build back better. That seems to be the common catchphrase. How are we going to do that? In our transformation post-COVID-19, sustainability, innovation, and resiliency should be at the forefront. Again, how are we going to do that? Higher expectations from society are going to translate into new reimagined ways of doing things in what we call this new normal. Again, how are we going to do this? I told you I was going to make data exciting, and we believe data is a key role to play for businesses to make the right, sound, and enforced science-based decisions going forward. Decisions that will need to provide the most impact for society for both our ESG performance and their real contribution to SDGs. We have to have clear, define our strategic pathway towards sustainability, which involves an alignment of our vision and operational objectives, and the SDG targets. This shall ensure a direct and more concrete impact to our business's contribution to the SDGs. It is time no longer for incremental movement forward. We need to jump ahead with a total transformation. It is also critical that these sustainable strategies are communicated internally and externally to all shareholders. Without this communication, we will never achieve this great leap forward. There are various frameworks that have been developed, best practices and standards, and these can help organizations in executing and communicating their sustainability strategies and practices. One of the existing standards is the UN Compact 10 Principles. These are categorized by human rights, labor standards, environment, and anti-corruption. Other global standards that are available include GRI's Sustainability Reporting Standards, IIRC's Integrated Reporting Council, Sustainable Accounting Standards, SASB, and climate-related recommendations, Task Force on Financial Disclosures. These frameworks and standards are the backbone of evidence-based ESG reporting, which is frankly just the beginning. Gathering the data, finding out where we are so that we can then make positive steps towards Agenda 2030. Information gathered across supply chain shall also be inputted to determine the entire impact of ESG performance for a company. Monitoring and evaluation, or M&E mechanisms, we believe are key to this, helping to promote an organization's transparency and accountability to all of its stakeholders. Such mechanisms encapsulate the interaction between sustainability strategies, technologies, and stakeholder engagements. Who are we and why are we making this statement? We're 25 years in as a provider of data solutions for governments, for enterprises, for NGOs. ADEC comes into the picture as a ESG assurance provider. We provide systems that assure those systems. Our total staff today, we've grown from the Philippines. We have started from two people 25 years ago. We now have over 3,000 staff around the world that provide a portfolio of ESG solutions, directly and indirectly contributing to the SDGs. We do this by providing monitoring and evaluation tools. Some of you are actually use our tools or systems and wouldn't realize it. We sit at the nexus of sustainability, resiliency, climate change adaptation, and risk management. These tools are applied on various industries, institutions, and geographies around the world. As an example, CleanChain is one of our flagships. CleanChain was developed in the Philippines and then deployed around the world as a supply chain sustainability management platform. It enables brands, primarily apparel brands, to easily collaborate with supply chain partners and their ongoing sustainability initiatives. CleanChain's pioneering module is a chemical management, which includes chemical management plans, compliance, and wastewater oversight. From its humble beginnings, it now has over 50,000 chemical formulations and a partnership with Zero Discharge of Hazardous Chemicals, ZDHC. Our clients' brands include 1,300 factories in 35 countries who are utilizing the platform. Data-driven decisions that are helping complex compliance make smarter decisions. We also work directly with governments. ADEC works with UNEP and Abu Dhabi Global Environment, in which we're a partner for the development of Indicator Reporting Information System, or IRIS. IRIS is part of the project in which to develop environmental information for nations submitting to UN resolutions. So what we do is we have an establishment of a global IRIS Connect coalition, which is a community of IRIS adopters, implementers, and funders. As a further example, Metrics Track is another tool that we use for M&E. It's where data and GHG emissions, water effluent are captured and monitored. As we grew out from the Philippines, I'd use this as an example that Makati City in the Philippines is actually one of our pioneering clients for this solution. Lastly, as an example, UNDP and BioFin and the Philippine Department of Natural Resources partnered with ADEC to develop an M&E and investment platform for sustainable investments and the promotion of biodiversity in the Philippines. I hope this gives some examples of the systems and M&E that we provide. We believe a pathway to action is through data-driven monitoring and evaluation. M&E systems enable stakeholders to make swift, data-driven, and evidence-based decisions. These decisions are critical to us to assess the progress of our SDG-related efforts and build resilient and sustainable businesses as we face the challenges of the future. We will only find effective solutions and actions by marrying together the transformational economic activities and SDGs together. Thank you.
Thank you, James. I really like what you said earlier, how we are all in this together, and that the SDGs can't be in lockdown. And, I also really like what you said about how, data, can be really harnessed to make smarter decisions. So we have about 10 minutes left. So just a very short time for Q&A. So we have one question from Michelle here who had said, the technology, innovation, and sustainable business models presented so far are excellent examples of businesses being part of the solution towards climate action. But how much measurement, what is being done to ensure its impact on the economy, environment, and society? So Robin has very kindly answered in the chat, how the Singapore Solar and Battery Project, as well as the issuance of their mini green bond, how it has allowed them to show and demonstrate the impact. If Robin, if you'd like to elaborate further on that, please go ahead. And as well as other speakers, if you would like to answer Michelle's questions, the floor is yours.
Sure, thank you so much, Kim, and thank you, Michelle, for the question. I think it's really good that to keep us on our toes and be transparent with our projects, because today you have large organizations with a whole team focused on sustainable reporting and being transparent. But us, for like a lean company, it's our impact investors, it is our clients that keep us accountable and then always check on us. Hey, really, how much impact have we done? How much energy have we done? And I think what's really nice is right from the beginning, we've always targeted people, planet, profit. And we want to help the client, we want to engage the local community. We hire the local villagers from the neighboring resort. And even the trees that we had to clear because of the land, we planted 10 times that amount, and it can perform as well. So it's not just mentioned but not proven. So I think it's good to have all this documented and then reported to our sustainability report.
Kimberly, if I may just add to this point, because in my business, measurement is a key part of our business, right? Yeah. So I really resonate with this question. There's a management axiom that says you can only manage what you can measure, right? So really, there is no, so we should always be trying to measure, but I just want to highlight that there could be two kinds of measurements. There's outcome measures, which is what I think Michelle is talking about, the impact that what you're doing in terms of the outcome, but there's also process measures that you need to keep track that will lead to the outcome, right? So it's good to measure. And my other point I wanted to share is that, but measuring can take a cost. There's an effort to measure. And in the traditional way, measurement is done very manually and often after the fact. But in the new way, in the digital way that COVID-19 is pushing all of us into, right, this digitization, there are now a lot of simpler technology-driven methods, whether it's a sensor or whether it's a web-based app that allows you to quickly take photos of things and then immediately count whether something is done or not done. There are many new ways. So I'm challenging everyone to look to, first of all, prioritize measurement. If you don't measure it, you will never manage it. And second, look for creative ways to measure. And you're not just always measuring outcome, you can also be measuring the process. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks, Ash. I mean, I think that's a really good way to think about it. When you look at process and outcome, that kind of mental model, I think that would be interesting, because I think a lot of the times people tend to only look at the outcome, but I think the process is just as important as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, please go ahead.
First of all, great input. Thank you very much for that question, Michelle. I think all of us have spent a good amount of time of our careers in sustainability or sustainable related business, and have found it frankly very challenging. And it's because, in my humble opinion, just putting forward a value proposition to clients, to society, to to somebody that's going to write a check, and making them move from business as usual to some future state has been extremely challenging. And we've been at this, particularly sustainability, for 12 years, and I feel we're at such a time now. We have such an opportunity for society to we hit the pause button, and with that, new business models, from online education to telemedicine to things that everyone knew that was out there. People understand there's a value proposition in green, in sustainability, in resiliency, but it was always something that was like, maybe next week we'll look at it, next month. But today we actually have this huge opportunity. And to be frank, society is not just dealing with the economic fallout. We're also dealing with social injustices. We're dealing with so many aspects that we're at a turning point. I don't care who you are or what political stripe that you come from. You can't not see that society is at a turning point and looking for a new contract with all of its members, from government to NGOs to the private sector. And this is the time. I mean, maybe I've been at this too long, and I'm a fervent believer, but I've never seen such a time for us to introduce first the value proposition. The value proposition, sustainability, resiliency, needs to be communicated with business, in partnership with business. We're not a threat to business. We actually are going to help them. For the ones who want and choose to be part of a dynamic future, they need to embrace sustainability. Now, I know everyone on here and probably everyone on the blogs are of similar mindset, but it's our business to try to take our value proposition and bring it forward, bring it out to a broader community, to show them that wasteful, unconscious waste needs to be addressed. And it's not only money in their pocket, because somehow that hasn't moved the needle as much as you think it would have. We need to figure out a way to put the value proposition in front of the decision makers, the stakeholders, for them to embrace it and build it back better with this in mind.
Thank you very much, James. Thank you very much, for all your answers. I've noted that there's one more question by Sanjay, just to know a little bit more about the background of Global Compact Network Singapore and the organizer and what we have. You can follow us on our Facebook and LinkedIn pages. You can just search Global Compact Network Singapore and we should. Do stay tuned there for more updates and events that we will have. But for now, we are running a little bit late on time. I'd like to hand over to Ms. Esther Chang, the Executive Director of Global Compact Network Singapore, to say a few closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Kimberly, and a big thank you to all our speakers, Robin, Ash, Sharon, and James, for sharing your innovations and commitment for climate action. Your company are an integral part of building a very sustainable and resilient supply chains. And we encourage during this time, as we weather through the economic recovery, the COVID pandemic, really for companies to think about rebuilding, like transform the way we do things. Now is the time, things that have been so well deserved. And thank you to our participants for tuning in. I hope this session has sparked new ideas and inspired to look into possible solutions that you can put into your company on the path to a more economically and environmentally efficient future. As you know, we are less than 10 years away from meeting the SDGs. And while we have made some progress, we're still quite far off from a lot of different areas. And we are facing, as James put, a turning point. We are facing irreversible damage, and climate change is threatening our existence. So here at GCNS, we have launched a Decade of Decisive Action campaign, a rallying call for companies to reimagine the way forward and take concrete actions to sustainability. No one can do everything, but everybody can do something. So do get in touch with Global Compact and our local networks. We are based out of Singapore to learn more about our activities in your country and how we can support you. And if you'd like to get in touch with any of our panelists today, please do just network on Hopin or get in touch with GCNS. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the summit.
Thank you, everyone. So just some minor housekeeping. So we really hope that this session, has inspired you to think of creative ways of your own to advance climate action, in your daily lives at work. So if you'd like to keep updated, as mentioned, please follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn for more information. You can just search Global Compact Networks Singapore. So yes, if you stay in Hopin, you will be able to interact, with us, the speakers, if you have any further questions that you'd like to ask. But if not, I wish you all a wonderful day, afternoon or evening, and hope to see you around. Thank you.